Welcome back. It's Sunday, Palm Sunday, and we are in my kitchen again. And today I'm going to be sharing how I make my cinnamon rolls with you. So a couple things I want to share with you about when you're prepping for a recipe. Tips that I do, if it's something that I have made more than a dozen times, I still take the time to read the recipe over a couple times just to refresh my memory and possibly look over any tips I've written in my recipe book. It's just really important to take the time to do that ahead of time. And also, anytime I'm working with yeast, I make sure I'm not rushing things. When you're working with yeast, you want to make sure you're giving the time that it needs to rise and be patient with it. It's not something that you're really going to want to rush through and get done in a quick manner. Otherwise, your recipe's not going to turn out as good as it could. The next step that I take when I'm getting ready to make a recipe is I get all the ingredients out of my pantry. It's just easier to have things right on hand on the counter rather than going back and forth and potentially having food on my hands and grabbing boxes or Tupperware out of my cupboard and just getting things really messy. So I try to keep things nice and tidy, and keeping the ingredients in front of me makes it for a smoother process. So the first thing I'm going to do is dissolve my yeast in lukewarm water. Anytime my recipe says lukewarm water, I usually just go for 110 degrees, but you can go anywhere from 95 degrees up to 110. And the best way to measure that is if you have a digital thermometer. If you don't have a digital thermometer, it's going to be warm to the touch, but it's not going to burn your skin. So we have the water going into the bowl, and then we're going to sprinkle the yeast on top. The recipe actually calls for packets of yeast, but I don't have packets of yeast right now. So one packet is equal to 2 1/4 teaspoons. So you're just going to sprinkle the yeast on top. It'll just make a nice layer. And then we're going to let this sit for about 3 to 5 minutes. And the yeast should get frothy. And then you'll know it's ready to move on. As you can see, the yeast has dissolved. There's a little bit of froth on the top of the water, so it is now time for us to add the next set of ingredients. Next, the ingredients that we're adding are oil, and I like as much natural as possible in my recipes, and my sister-in-law has given us some nice farm fresh free range eggs. So we're going to be adding 3 eggs. And one ingredient that's in this recipe that really gives it a nice flavor is yellow cake mix. There's not many recipes that you find when you're searching for a cinnamon roll recipe that will pop up online saying yellow cake mix. So if you're looking for a specific type of recipe when you're searching, make sure you put it in the search engine, cake mix, next to cinnamon rolls. We're going to add some flour and a little bit of salt. And then we're going to be mixing this with a hand mixer, and what we're looking for are bubbles to start to appear. And once everything's mixed really well and those bubbles are appearing, we're going to wait just a few minutes before we add some more flour. As you can see, the bubbles are appearing near the top of the batter, so it's now time for us to move on to adding more flour. And there's quite a bit of flour, so we don't have to add all of it at once. You want to make sure it gets stirred in really well. So we're just going to add a little bit at a time and mix it. At this point, we're stirring. We're not beating anymore. You don't want to overwork your batter or overwork your yeast. Sometimes when I'm working with yeast, it really is calming to me because I can take the time to work on the actual recipe rather than speeding through it. It can be therapeutic. we're just going to continue to add the flour. I've added all the rest of the flour that the recipe calls for, but my dough is still sticky. And anytime you're dealing with a recipe and yeast and making breads, sometimes your dough might be a little stickier than normal for multiple reasons. I don't really know what all those reasons are, but as you continue, just add a little bit of flour at a time. I usually use the rule of thumb of a half a cup. You don't want to go too crazy because you can't take that flour out once you put it in. And you're also going to have flour on your surface where you're kneading and rolling it out. So it's still going to continue to get flour. You just don't want it to have too much flour. Just going to stir this in. And if it gets to the right consistency, then we will start to knead the dough. So I'm right towards the end of kneading the dough. It's important if you're following a recipe to knead the amount of times that it says to. If it tells you to do it for 5 minutes, do it for 5. If it tells you 10, do 10. It can be quite the workout, but it's important for the bread and the gluten to be activated through that kneading process. So don't cut any corners when you're kneading your dough. Also, the flour, when you're measuring flour, I wanted to tell you earlier that you shouldn't scoop your measuring cup into your container or into the bag. I would highly suggest investing in a scoop so that you're able to scoop out the flour into your measuring cup, and that just allows for you not to have too much flour. And then once you're done, you can just level off the flour. So now we're going to add the dough into an oiled bowl and just take the dough and toss it around some. That way it coats the dough itself. Helps it stay moist and not to create a crispy layer over the top of the dough. Next, we're going to take a clean towel and put it over the bowl, and we're going to let this sit for about an hour, maybe less, until it's doubled in size. So as you can see, the dough has doubled in size. One little tip I have for you is when you're checking your dough, if you want to see if it's actually ready, you can push your finger into the dough, and if your fingerprint stays, then that just means that your dough is ready, and they call it in bulk, is one of the terms that they use when they're making bread. So now we're just going to take it out of the bowl, split it in half, and roll it out and make it into some yummy cinnamon rolls. And once we get it rolled out, we're going to let them rise again. So as you can see, the counter is floured, and I usually just roll it a couple times so I can get it on both sides. And I'm going to flour my rolling pin also. So Jason and I were talking about this last night. I started making this recipe about 15 years ago. And I started in the last house that we lived in. And it was just something that I found that I liked, and I would just make it on the spur of the moment, probably around my old work schedule. And that somehow transitioned into making them every Christmas Eve for friends and family. I'm not sure how it evolved to that, but it has, and it's a nice little tradition that we have. And something special too for our friends and family, I hope. So now that we have it rolled out, I'm going to take some butter, softened butter. I don't have any specific measurement, but I'm going to make the filling. I've tried a couple different fillings. You know, in the original recipe that I followed, it said sugar. It didn't say brown sugar, it just said sugar. So for a while I used sugar. Well, I realized I didn't really care for it that way. and I switched to brown sugar, which is nice because it gives it a little bit more substance in the filling. And the butter doesn't have to be super thick, but I just spread the butter out. And you're gonna wanna leave one of your ends not buttered, because at the end it's gonna seal your cinnamon roll and you're gonna have it be on that outside edge. And then once you have the sugar down, we'll sprinkle some cinnamon. I was watching a video recently of somebody else making a cinnamon roll, and they took and actually mixed their butter with their brown sugar and with their cinnamon before even putting it on. So I guess you could do it that way, and I considered doing that today, but because this is how I've always done it, I like to stick to what I know. I think I finally figured that out one time when I got lost on a back road. I thought I would take a shortcut and follow my GPS, and I ended up reaching a closed bridge, and I turned around. I didn't have self-service where I was, and I went to where a Four Corners was that I had passed. Decided to take a turn, thinking I could still get around that way, only to find another bridge closed. So I happened to get my phone map pulled up because my GPS kept wanting me to go over these closed bridges. Long story short, I got to where I was going, but I was working that day and I ended up getting my client 20 minutes late. He was not happy. I was embarrassed. And so since then, I have really tried to just stick with what I know. So that's why we're sticking with this today. I decided I shouldn't try something new when I'm making a video about what I like to make. So I don't really smooth it out or anything. I just go through and sprinkle the brown sugar. Might look like a lot to you, but it's really a perfect amount. And then once I have that all covered on the dough, sprinkle a ton of cinnamon all over the whole batch. And then once we get this on, we're gonna roll it up and stretch it. And I'm sure you noticed I didn't have like a completely straight edge on this side. That's okay. Does not have to be perfect. And you're gonna wanna try and roll it as tight as you can, because like I said, we're gonna stretch this after we get it rolled. You still see that? I still have a little bit of an edge there that I can seal. Move my bowl. Just gonna take it, and the weight of it kind of self-stretches it. And go along the edge, and you're just gonna pinch that seam with the other dough. Some of it seals exactly, some of it might not, but for the most part, you're gonna get a seal. It's just gonna hold your cinnamon roll together. I have a greased pan ready. I'm gonna go through and cut them. I don't weigh them, I don't measure them, I just cut them. And then they're gonna sit cut side up on your pan. Giving it a little bit of space in between so you can let them rise and give them the space to do that. I know some people like to add nuts to their cinnamon rolls. That's fine. You can put it right in your filling, or you could maybe just put them on top. I guess I cut that one a little too big, but that's okay. However you like. I'm trying to give you different ideas as I'm making the recipe, because it doesn't have to be just one way or another. Everybody has their preference, on how they like certain recipes. You just have to find what yours is. I have a little mini cinnamon roll right here. Trust me, it'll get eaten. So we're gonna take the next side of dough and get it all rolled out. And I don't clean up my counter from any of the sugar, I just leave it because it's gonna give extra flavor. So the cinnamon rolls have been rising for about a half hour, and now they're ready to cook. We're gonna put them in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes until the top starts to get a little brown. And now while those cook, I'll get some frosting mixed up. There's a few minutes left of cooking. Let's take a peek. Oh, they are looking yummy. I wish you could smell them. They need to cook a little bit longer. Time's up. The top pan is already done. I've taken those out, and now the bottom rack is done. So we're gonna take those out too. Now these will cool for a few minutes and then we'll put the icing on top, but you still want them a little warm. So I told you I was gonna make some icing while the cinnamon rolls were baking, and I just took a simple recipe. It's 4 tablespoons of butter, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 3 cups of confectioner's sugar, and 4 tablespoons of milk, and just mixing that up, and it just makes a nice icing that can run and not be a frosting, I guess. And I think I said earlier that I was making a frosting, but I lied. Another thing that I have done in the past just to help on time, and it might be like against everybody's kitchen rules when they're making something homemade. I'm okay with doing things semi-homemade if time allows. So in the past I've done store-bought frosting, cream cheese frosting, just because maybe I want to get these done, but I don't have the time to really make an icing at the same time. So there's nothing wrong with doing that, and most people can't even tell, and they taste just as good. Because by the time you're getting the icing on, it's going to start to melt into the cinnamon roll, and it just absorbs all that good sugary flavor. So we're done icing the cinnamon rolls, and now we're going to plate some of them. And it's quite possible I am going to be delivering some of these, keeping my social distance and dropping them off on people's doorsteps. But let's face it, I can't eat all these, and our whole house can't eat all these, or we will be not fitting into our pants. So I'm all done plating. I hope that our friends enjoy this plate. This one is going to go to Chris and Sarah, so guys, I hope you enjoy it. The big ones are for Mom and Dad. The boys, you're gonna have to fight over the other 3, but don't fight too hard. No emergency room visits. I know you two. I'm glad you guys stopped by today and watched my video. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope you've gotten some pointers and tips, maybe things that you haven't thought about, or maybe you just needed a little bit of encouragement to push you to make some cinnamon rolls. I know that my family enjoys them, and yours will too. So like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And last thing I need from you is I need your help. I need a name for my segment. So I'm looking for your ideas. So comment below what you think mine should be called. Jason gave me an idea of Pitch in the Kitchen, I think is what he said. I keep butchering it, but we're just gonna leave it at that. So if you can give me your ideas, I'd appreciate it. And we will let you know what we select. So have a great Palm Sunday. I hope you've enjoyed spending time with your family today, and hope to see you next time. God bless.
Hey everybody, I'm stealing some of Joy's thunder. You're gonna see me in her video, probably in the outtakes. We are on a quarantine special delivery of cinnamon rolls, and hopefully the big brother doesn't see this, but we're sticking them in mailboxes, even though I'm not a federal employee. So that's what we're doing, and I'm also editing video as we go along so we can get this thing up and everybody can watch Joy's amazing cinnamon roll baking skills. We love you. Thanks for watching. See ya. Why do we start this way every time?
We have to get the bugs out.
Bugs are out, dude. All right.
This is not working.
I know. The whole video is going to be outtakes.
Okay. Oh.
I'm not going to hit the button. It's just rolling.
What?
I'll edit it out. Every time I reach up there, hit the record button, it's freaking you out. Okay, fine.
Hi, it's Sunday, Palm Sunday, and we are back in the kitchen. What? Today I'm going to be sharing with you my cinnamon roll recipe. No, I'm not. I'm going to be sharing with you how I make my cinnamon rolls. Hi, it's Sunday. Welcome back to our kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how I make my cinnamon rolls.
What's wrong with you?
You can start and stop it right there. The next thing I'm going to do is take the time to get all the ingredients out of my pantry. So anytime I'm getting ready to do a lot of one thing, take the time to get each ingredient out. I don't like that take. There were a little bit of yeast molecules. So I've added all in the flour. Now I'm going to add the dough into a oiled bowl and just toss the dough around. It just gives a coating on the dough and keeps it moist. And we're going to let it rest until it doubles in size.
You got it all right.
So the time's up. I've already taken the top rack off. Like, subscribe, comment below. Also, I need your help. I need a name for my little sidekick here in the kitchen. There's been a couple bounced around the house, but we want to hear from you. So give us some of your comments on what you think my video should be called. I heard from Jason that he was fine with it being pitching in kitchen, because I was pitching in last week, but I'm not too sure about that. So give me your ideas. I'm welcoming them. And we're glad that you came by today. I hope you've enjoyed your Palm Sunday with your family. Thank you, Louie, for speaking up, but we don't need your opinion.
Hey everybody, I'm I'm stealing some of, no, I'm not.